Today, let's have a quick recap of the instinctive behavior or innate behavior. So, what is instinct? An inherited and adapted system of coordination within the nervous system as a whole, which, when activated, find expression in behavior culminating in a fixed pattern. It's a general term applied to behavior differences largely determined by heredity. The behavior differences which are determined by heredity. So, instinct or instinctive behavior is something which is determined by heredity, and it's a fixed type of behavior, and that something which is culminating in a fixed pattern. So, instinct, in case of all organisms, we can have a quick recap. Most scientists recognize that all kinds of behaviors are influenced by the animal's genetic makeup and at the same time by the environmental conditions which exist during development. Much animal behavior is innate because it appears as part of an animal's internal store under normal circumstances. Genetic factors are necessary for such behavior. Traditionally, an instinct is thought of an automatic response, an inherited or innate behavior, an unlearned behavior that is built in as part of the structure of organism. This can also be understood by the following crude example. Pressing a correct switch, that is the stimulation of an appropriate receptor, will activate preformed circuits or reflexes and the appropriate wheel will run. That running of the wheel is an instinctive behavior is evoked. The running of the wheel is an example for an instinctive behavior being evoked. The concept of instinct has undergone many changes in its history. In the early stages, it was regarded as to be inborn, reflex like, and driven from within the organism. Modern researchers have separated the innate, the reflex, and the motivational aspects of apparently instinctive behavior and regarded them as separate aspects or issues. So now, innate behavior, reflex action, and motivational aspects are currently treated as different topics. Fraser in 1974 is also of the opinion that innate behavior is the element of behavior which is inherited. That is something which is inherited. This inherited behavior may be modified according to experiences with its environment. Instinctive pattern provides adaptability, and as a form of adaptation, it is subject to change with natural selection. The central nervous system or mechanism which determines instinct is already established in the brain of young animals at the time of its birth or at prenatal stage. Tavolga in 1969 stated that where instinctive behavior has been studied in a developmental fashion, it can be seen that each appearing innate activity passes through stages of development, and at each stage is affected by the organism's experience with its environment. Even an animal isolated from birth from its fellows has certain experiences with its environment and with itself. These experiences decide development of behavior. This view fully agrees with modern concepts of heredity that consider the phenotype of the individual as an end product of interaction of the genotype with its environment. Further, a mysterious type of instinctive behavior or inborn behavior is as a result of interaction or a variety of factors such as structural, hormonal, neural, sensory, and experimental factors. Development of a behavior does not begin at hatching or birth, but has its primordia in the embryo, like structural characteristics. Thus, an instinctive behavior can be defined as an activity that develops as an animal grows up in its normal environment. It is a behavior that is typical of the species, it is adaptive, it is more or less stereotyped, There is a little change in its performance. It is resistant to alteration when developed, organized in the higher nerve centers, and it's organized in genetically similar animals as identical patterns in the majority of animals of the same type. The innate mechanisms are identical patterns in the majority of animals of the same type, and that these responses from an animal are only typically elicited in a particular species in response to some specific stimulation. It is released promptly as a key stimulus in the environment, which once commenced will proceed to the terminal fraction. This environment does not guide the animal in its behavior, it merely releases it. And here is a term which is very important, that is a releaser. Releaser is defined as any specific feature of animal's environment which prompts an instinctive response. Releaser is something which is defined as any specific feature of animal's environment which prompts an instinctive response. So environment does not guide the animal in its behavior, it merely releases it. If it does not find an outlet, it tends to accumulate its energy so that it becomes evoked by a minimum stimulation. When this instinctive behavior does not find an outlet, it tends to accumulate its energy so that it becomes evoked by a minimum stimulation. Now comes the topic of innate releasing mechanism. We can see the Herringall's experiment along with the behavior of European three-spined stickleback, that's a fish. And now let's learn about the highlights of instinctive behavior. Instinctive behavior evolves gradually so as do structural features. Natural selection modifies it to fit the environment. It consists of rigid stereotyped patterns of movement, very similar in all individuals of a species. Instinctive patterns can often be evoked most readily by very simple stimuli. An animal may be inborn with few inherited responses, but instead with an ability to modify its behavior in the light of its experience as it grows up. In higher animals, an animal may be inborn with few inherited responses, but instead with an ability to modify its behavior in the light of its experiences as it grows up. This case is in case of higher animals, but in those animals which have a short lifespan, this instinctive behavior is very useful. So, behavior patterns that develop normally in complete isolation must be under some degree of genetic control and result from an inherited potentiality of the nerve system. Genes may control behavior, but they must interact with the developing animal's environment. Innate behavior is not a limited response, but may involve a series of patterns that run a predictable course involving complex set of activities. Genes may control behavior, but they must interact with developing animals' environment. There is some adaptability happening. Innate behavior is not a limited response but may involve a sequence of patterns that run a predictable course involving complex set of activities. Some innate behaviors may be complete in seconds. Some may show extraordinary elaboration and may take hours, such as migration. Now let's learn about the examples of innate or instinctive behaviors. Feeding, nest building, grooming, cleaning, flight, escape, sleep, migrations, etc. are examples of innate or instinctive behavior. Which are the feeding behavior, nest building, grooming, cleaning, flight, escape, sleep, and migrations. Now let's learn about the categorization of innate or instinctive behavior. From the above referred highlights of instinctive behavior, It is clear that in some cases it is completely stable or fixed, but in some it is modifiable by experience and external environmental conditions, such as learned behavior. Phylogenetically speaking, the general evolutionary trend is towards increased resilience, modifiability, and decreased fixedness of innate behaviors. Phylogenetically speaking, the general evolutionary trend is towards increased resilience, modifiability, and decreased fixedness of innate behaviors as one ascends the phylogenetic scale, and animals become more and more complex and advanced. This tendency obviously reached its peak in primates and especially in humans. Considering the complexity, fixedness, and modifiability of behavior pattern, the innate instinctive behavior can be categorized into the following. First one is the reflexes and reflex actions, fixed action patterns, and modifiable action patterns. All these three topics will be covered in the next videos, but before that, let's once again read the highlights of instinctive behavior. Instinctive behavior evolves gradually as do structural features. Natural selection modifies it to fit the environment. It consists of rigid stereotyped patterns of movement, very similar in all individuals of a species. Instinctive pattern can often be evoked most readily by very simple stimuli. An animal may be inborn with few inherited responses, but instead with an ability to modify its behavior in the light of its experience as it grows up. So there is a chance of adaptability and modifying behavior, modifications in behavior. Behavior patterns that develop normally in complete isolation must be under some degree of genetic control and result from an inherited potentiality of the nervous system. Genes may control behavior, but they must interact with developing animals' environment. Innate behavior is not a limited response but may involve a sequence of patterns that run a predictable course involving complex set of activities. Some innate behaviors may be complete in seconds, some may show extraordinary elaboration and may take hours, like migration. So, examples was feeding, nest building, grooming, cleaning, flight, escape, sleep behavior, and migrations.